In-laws said I trapped their son. Prenup proved I'm worth $2 million more, and now they're embarrassed. My mother-in-law didn't even lower her voice when she said it, like it was the most reasonable conclusion in the world. We were halfway through dinner, the kind of family meal that's really just a courtroom with wine glasses, and she leaned back in her chair, dabbed the corner of her mouth with her napkin, and said, "Well, you can't blame us for thinking you trapped him." The room went oddly quiet except for the soft scrape of my father-in-law's fork against his plate. My husband's hand tightened around his glass, so hard I thought it might crack. I felt my face go hot, then cold, like my body couldn't decide between rage and shock. My tongue went heavy in my mouth, and all I could do for a second was stare at her lipstick print on the rim of her water glass and think, did she really just say that out loud? I tried to breathe like a normal person, but my lungs were doing that shallow, panicky thing they do when you're trying not to cry in front of people who would enjoy it. My chair felt suddenly too small. I could smell rosemary and roasted chicken and that expensive candle she always lights when guests come over, something meant to smell like clean wealth. My husband, Noah, shifted beside me, knee bumping mine under the table like he was trying to anchor me. His voice came out low, controlled, but I could hear the strain in it. "Mom," he said, "what the hell are you talking about?" Maya lifted her brows, innocent as a painting. "I'm talking about the fact that you're doing just fine," she said, and then she looked at me like I was a stain she'd discovered on her favorite rug. "And then suddenly you were engaged, and suddenly she's family." My father-in-law cleared his throat loudly, like he wanted to sound reasonable while co-signing the insult. "We're just being careful," he said. "We've seen it before." I felt Noah's hand reach for mine, and my fingers were shaking so much my wedding band clicked softly against the table when I moved. It was a Saturday in late spring when I first realized Noah's parents weren't just a bit intense or old-fashioned, the way he tried to excuse them. We'd been together a year, and he'd invited me to his family's place for his dad's birthday lunch, one of those long, drawn-out events where the food is secondary to the performance of being a good family. Their house was huge in that beige, echo-y way where everything looks untouched. The kind of place where you're afraid to put your glass down without a coaster because you can feel the furniture judging you. I wore a simple dress, brought a bottle of wine, smiled until my cheeks hurt. I thought I was doing fine. Then his mother pulled me aside near the kitchen, close enough that it looked like a friendly chat, but far enough that no one else could hear, and asked in the most casual voice, "So, what do you do again?" Not, "What do you do?" Like she was interested. "What do you do?" Like she was checking if I belonged. "I work in operations," I said. "Project coordination. Mostly with." She cut me off with a little nod. She said, like she'd tasted something and didn't love it. "And your family?" "My family." I repeated, confused. "Yes," she said, smiling. "Are they local?" That was the first time I got the feeling she was trying to place me into a category. Like she was sorting laundry. Rich pile, acceptable pile, dangerous pile. I didn't grow up poor, but I didn't grow up like them. I grew up in a normal suburb with normal parents and normal arguments about bills. My mom saved every receipt in a little envelope, and my dad worked overtime without complaining. We didn't do summer homes. We did, maybe we can afford a weekend away if nothing breaks. But we were stable, and we were close, and we laughed a lot. Noah's family laughed too, but felt like it had rules. Noah, to his credit, never acted like he was above anyone. That's why I loved him. He was kind in a way that wasn't performative. He remembered tiny things. How I like my tea, which songs make me cry, the fact that I get anxious in crowded places and need a little air sometimes. He didn't try to impress me with money. He wasn't flashy. He was steady. He was the first person I'd ever dated where being with him felt calm, which is why his parents confused me. Because how do two people raise someone as gentle as Noah and still look at the world like it's a competition they have to win? The engagement happened quietly, like Noah does everything. It wasn't a public stunt. It wasn't a photographer hiding in a bush. He proposed on our balcony on a random Tuesday night after we'd made pasta and watched half an episode of something we didn't even like. I was in leggings. My hair was up in a messy bun. He kept clearing his throat like he had a crumb stuck. Then he turned to me and said, I don't want to do life without you. And his hands shook so badly he dropped the ring box onto the outdoor rug. I laughed, then I cried, then I said yes so fast it sounded like a hiccup. When we told his parents, I swear the atmosphere changed like someone turned down the thermostat. His mother smiled, tight, polished, and hugged me for 2 seconds too long, then leaned back and said, "How exciting." His father shook Noah's hand like it was a business deal. Then his mother said the word that would haunt me for months. Prenup. She didn't ask. She stated it. "Of course you'll do a prenup," she said, like it was obvious and responsible and not an insult wrapped in legal language. Noah blinked. "Mom," he said, already weary, "we haven't even—" His father interrupted. "It's smart," he said. "It protects everyone." I kept my face neutral because I didn't want to be the fiancé who flips a table over the word prenup. I'm not anti-prenup. I'm anti-being treated like a con artist. There's a difference. Noah looked at me, silently checking if I was okay. I forced a small smile. "We can talk about it," I said, because at that point I still thought this was just them being cautious, not them building a narrative where I was a predator and Noah was the prey. Over the next few weeks, prenup became Noah's mother's favorite word. Every phone call ended with it. Every dinner included it. She'd send Noah links to articles about protecting generational wealth, like she thought I was a raccoon circling their bins. She'd make these little comments like, "It's not personal, dear," and then follow it with something deeply personal like, "We just want to make sure Noah isn't taken advantage of." One night, after yet another awkward conversation, Noah sat on our couch, elbows on knees, and said, "I'm sorry." They're like this. I stared at the wall for a second. "Do they think I'm with you for money?" I asked. Noah's jaw tightened. "They think everyone is with everyone for something," he said. "It's how they're wired." I felt that old familiar ache of not being believed. "It makes me feel disgusting," I admitted, voice small. "Like I have to prove I'm not trapping you." Noah turned and took my face in his hands gently, thumbs brushing my cheekbones. "You're not," he said. "And I don't need them to understand that. Here's the thing, though. Even when your partner believes you, it still hurts to be treated like a threat by people who are supposed to become your family. It's like trying to grow roots in soil that keeps rejecting you." So we agreed to do the prenup. Not because I felt guilty, not because I had something to hide, because Noah wanted peace, and because I didn't want this to become a permanent war that would stain our wedding. Also, selfishly, I wanted it done so they'd shut up. The prenup meeting was scheduled at their lawyer's office, which I didn't love. Noah suggested we get our own lawyers, separate representation, which is the right thing to do, and I did. But his parents insisted the first meeting be at their lawyer's office to go over the basics. Translation. They wanted to set the tone. We walked into this glossy, silent office with framed certificates on the wall and a receptionist who smiled like she could smell fear. Noah's mother greeted us like she was hosting a brunch. She looked calm, triumphant even, like this was her proving she could still control her son's life. Her lawyer was an older man with a neat tie and a voice that sounded like it belonged in an audiobook. He said things like asset disclosure and separate property and marital estate, and I nodded politely and tried not to let my discomfort show. I wore a simple blazer, hair neat, hands folded in my lap so no one could see how tense I was. Then the lawyer said, "We'll need both parties to provide a full list of premarital assets and liabilities." Noah nodded. "Okay," he said. "Sure." Maya Miles smiled at me. "This is where it gets important," she said, as if she was teaching me. We'd already prepared our disclosures with our lawyers, because I like being organized and because I don't enjoy being ambushed. Noah had a decent salary, some savings, a retirement account, a car, some student debt, normal adult stuff. Me? I had something I hadn't talked about much, not because it was a secret, but because it felt private. My mom died when I was 23. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't sudden in a movie way. It was a slow illness that stole her in pieces until one day she was gone. She'd been careful with money her whole life. She bought a small investment unit years earlier, nothing fancy. And when she passed, she left it to me. My dad insisted. He said, "She want you to have security." I cried so hard I thought I'd break, because the idea of my mom planning for my future while she was dying still makes me feel like I can't breathe. Over the years, I'd paid off the mortgage on that unit with rent and extra payments. I didn't live off it. I worked full-time. I drove an old car. I didn't post about it. It wasn't fun money. It was my mom's last gift, and I treated it like something sacred. Also, and this part matters, my dad wasn't flashy either, but he made a good living, and he'd invested quietly. He'd set up a small family trust that I was a beneficiary of. Not a billionaire situation. Not yacht money. But enough that, on paper, my net worth looked bigger than people would assume when they saw me carrying a tote bag with a broken zipper. So when it came time for disclosures and my lawyer's documents were placed on the table, the tone shifted. The lawyer adjusted his glasses and said, calmly, "And you have a property interest valued at approximately," he read the number, "and additional investment accounts totaling another number with no outstanding mortgage on the property." Maya Miles' smile didn't disappear. It froze, like her face got stuck in a position it hadn't practiced for. My father-in-law blinked. "What?" he said, like he hadn't heard correctly. Noah turned his head slowly toward me, eyebrows raised. Not angry, not shocked in a bad way, more like surprise because I hadn't given him every detail down to the dollar figure. I told him I had the unit. I hadn't told him the current valuation because it felt strange to assign a price to my mom. Maya Mile cleared her throat. "That can't be right," she said quickly, and the lawyer glanced up, mildly offended, because lawyers hate being told they're wrong. "It's supported by valuation documentation," my lawyer said evenly. There was a beat of silence, so thick you could hear the air conditioning click. Then the lawyer, still in his calm audiobook voice, said, "So, in summary, her premarital net worth exceeds his by approximately $2 million. $2 million. The number landed like a brick. Maya Miles' face went red in a way that started at her neck and climbed upward. My father-in-law stared at the papers like they might move on their own. Noah sat very still, then did something that made my chest tighten with love and relief. He reached over and put his hand on my knee, gently, like he was saying, "I'm here. I'm not leaving. I'm not ashamed of you. I'm not threatened." Maya Mile recovered first, because she always recovers first. She laughed, too brightly. "Well," she said, forcing it, "that's unexpected." My father-in-law coughed. "Good for you," he said, but it sounded like it hurt. I wanted to say something sharp. I wanted to say, "So, am I still trapping him?" But I didn't. I just sat there and felt my pulse in my wrists and tried not to cry out of sheer frustration. Because it wasn't the money that mattered. It was the fact that they'd already decided who I was without knowing anything about me. After the meeting, Noah and I got into the car, and he sat there for a second with both hands on the steering wheel, staring out at nothing. "I didn't know," he said quietly. "I didn't hide it," I replied, and my voice sounded defensive even though I didn't mean it to. "I told you about the unit. I don't like talking about it like it's a brag. It's my mom." Noah's throat moved when he swallowed. "I'm not upset," he said immediately. He let out a shaky breath. "I'm sorry you had to sit there while they assumed things." I stared out the window, jaw tight. "They're embarrassed," I said, and it came out flat. Noah nodded. "Good," he said simply. "We thought the prenup would shut them up. In some ways, it did." Maya Mile stopped saying protecting Noah, like I was a con. But she didn't apologize. She just pivoted. Suddenly her concern wasn't gold diggers. It was family unity. Suddenly, she wanted to be involved in wedding planning. Suddenly, she called me sweetheart, like she hadn't been implying I was a threat. And that's the part that made me angriest, honestly. Not the initial suspicion, the refusal to own it. The way she tried to rewrite the vibe without acknowledging the harm. Fast forward to the dinner where she said I trapped him. Back to the scene where my stomach went cold and Noah's hand tightened around his glass. It was a few months after the wedding. We'd already signed the prenup. We were married. We were settled into that early marriage rhythm of figuring out whose turn it is to buy toilet paper and how to split chores without keeping score. We were happy, but Noah's parents were still weird about me. Not overtly hostile, just prickly, like they were waiting for me to slip up. That particular dinner was because Noah's parents wanted to talk about the future, which is a phrase that always means we want to influence you. They serve expensive wine. His mom made a roast. His dad told stories about his own career like he was giving a TED Talk. Then my MIL said, "We worry you rushed into this," and looked straight at Noah. Noah frowned. "We dated for 3 years," he said. "That's not rushed." She shrugged. "It can be," she said, "when someone is motivated." I felt my skin prickle. Motivated by what? I asked, trying to keep my voice even. Maya Miles smiled, and that's when she said the word trapped, like she was just being honest. Noah's voice went sharp. "Stop," he said. "Just stop." My father-in-law lifted his hands slightly, palms out. "Noah, don't be dramatic," he said. "We're just saying—" "You're saying my wife trapped me." Noah snapped, and he looked furious now, properly furious. "You said it to her face. Do you hear yourself?" Maya Miles' eyes flashed. "We're allowed to protect our son," she said, voice hardening. Noah's laugh was bitter. "Protect me from what?" he asked. "From a stable marriage? From a woman who's been supporting me emotionally and practically for years?" My father-in-law's jaw tightened. "You don't know what people are capable of," he said. "We've seen women." "No, cut him off. You've seen women you don't respect," he said. "And you assume my wife is one of them." I could feel my heart pounding. My palms were sweaty. I wanted to disappear, and I wanted to scream at the same time, which is a weird feeling. Then Noah did something I didn't expect. He looked at his parents and said, calmly, "It's funny you keep saying she trapped me." Maya Miles' eyes narrowed. "Noah, no," he said, voice steady now, eyes calm. "You wanted a prenup so badly because you thought she was after my money. You sat in that lawyer's office and watched the numbers. You know, she came into this marriage with $2 million more than I did. The prenup mostly protects her. So if you're going to accuse someone of trapping someone, at least be honest about the direction." The table went dead silent. Maya Miles' face went a shade of red. I didn't know humans could reach without overheating. My father-in-law stared down at his plate like he'd suddenly remembered he had a fork. Maya Miles' voice came out thin. "That was private," she said. Noah didn't blink. "So were your accusations," he said. "But you made them public at this table." I sat there, heart hammering, feeling this strange mix of humiliation and vindication and grief. Because part of me wanted to cheer, and part of me hated that it had to come to this. I hated that my worth had to be proven with a number. I hated that respect, in their minds, could be bought or measured. Maya Miles swallowed. "We didn't mean," she started. Noah leaned forward slightly. "You did," he said quietly, "and you still haven't apologized." My father-in-law finally spoke, voice rough. "Okay," he said, and it sounded like he was swallowing pride. That was out of line. My Emile shot him a look like she could kill him with her eyes. Then she looked at me, and for a second I saw something in her expression that might have been shame. Real shame, not performance. But it was fleeting. She sat up straighter and said, stiffly, "I'm sorry if you were offended." I almost laughed. "If you were offended." Like it was my sensitivity, not her cruelty. Noah's hand found mine again under the table, and he squeezed once. Not hard, just enough to remind me I wasn't alone. We left shortly after. Noah didn't yell. He didn't slam doors. He just stood up, thanked them for dinner in that icy, polite way, and walked me out. In the car, my whole body started shaking like the adrenaline finally had somewhere to go. I stared out the window and said, "I hate that it came down to money." Noah's jaw flexed. "Me too," he said. "But they're the ones who made it about money first. They started the scoreboard." I swallowed, throat tight. "I didn't want to win," I whispered. "I just wanted to be treated like a person." Noah reached over and took my hand while he drove, thumb rubbing slow circles. "You are," he said. To me, the fallout was messy. Noah's parents didn't suddenly become warm and loving. They became cautious. Embarrassment does that to people. It makes them retreat into politeness and avoid the topic like it's radioactive. Maya Miles started texting me random things like recipes and thinking of you messages that felt like she was trying to paste over a crack in the wall without acknowledging their structural damage. A week later, she called Noah and said, "We don't appreciate being humiliated." Noah's voice was calm when he told me, but I could hear the anger behind it. I told her, he said, That humiliation is what happens when you say humiliating things. Then, because life loves irony, my father-in-law asked Noah if we'd be willing to look over some financial planning documents for them, because they were considering restructuring. Translation: they wanted advice. Maybe help. Maybe access to the person they'd been judging. Noah laughed when he told me. Not amused. More like, are you kidding me? I didn't want revenge. I didn't want them groveling. I also didn't want to be used as a safety net by people who treated me like a threat. So Noah and I agreed on boundaries. We'd keep things civil. We'd attend major events. But we were done auditioning, done proving, done trying to earn respect from people who only give it when they feel outmatched. Sometimes I still replay that moment at the dinner table when my MIL said, trapped, and I feel that same hot-cold rush. Sometimes I picture my younger self, trying so hard to be liked, trying to be easy, trying not to cause conflict, and I wish I could reach back and tell her she doesn't have to shrink to be acceptable. The funniest part, in a bitter way, is that the prenup didn't prove I was worth more in any emotional sense. It proved something smaller and uglier, that Noah's parents equate value with money. They couldn't imagine respecting me until a number forced them to. And even then, the respect was tangled up in embarrassment, not empathy. But here's what I take comfort in. Noah saw it. He didn't dismiss it. He didn't ask me to swallow it to keep the peace. He didn't stand by while his parents tried to label me as a trap. He drew a line, clearly, and he stood with me on the right side of it. And honestly, if someone needs a contract and evaluation to decide whether you deserve basic decency, they were never going to give you real belonging anyway. So now, when my MIL smiles too brightly and calls me sweetheart, I smile back politely, and I keep my roots where they've actually been watered. At home, with the man who chose me without needing a scoreboard, and who wasn't afraid to let his parents sit in the discomfort they created.